Work is something that all living things do. We all collect energy and transfer that energy into new things, but only human beings build identity and forge meaning from the work that they do. Think of career as kind of a long-standing pursuit. Human, what does it mean to be happy, and how can I be more of both?
Thank you for joining me in another episode of Hoda's Career Info. My name is Hoda and I'm your host. Today's guest is Scott Perry. Scott is the chief difference maker of Creative on Purpose. Creative on Purpose is a company that comprises a blog, a broadcast, a community, and a coaching program for people who are ready to fly higher and make a difference. Scott is also an Amazon top seller of two books, Endeavor and Onward. Finally, Scott is the head coach for Seth Godin's creative and freelancer workshops. I hope you enjoy my chat with Scott Perry as much as I did. It is a privilege, Scott Perry, to turn the tables on you and interview today. Having you on my show is exciting because you have so much experience in the topic I want to be talking about, which is the career literacy and the moving forward in our lives. And right away, part of the show is asking my guests to define a career term. What term did you choose? And I'd love to hear your description of it.
Oh boy, so you're asking me to remember what term I chose? What term did I choose, Hoda?
Well, my term for you is career literacy, but
Really?
you can use your creative on purpose storytelling. It is your question,
Yeah,
your
so
definition.
career literacy is such a juicy term because one of the things that we talk a lot about at Creative on Purpose is the importance of work. Work is something that all living things do. We all collect energy and transfer that energy into new things, but only human beings build identity and forge meaning from the work that they do. And so, if you're going to, so meaningful work seems to be something that's worth pursuing. And when I think of career literacy, I think of career as kind of a long-standing pursuit, uh, and but most of us are going to do work at a lot of different things over time, and so if I were to share a bold assertion or share a perspective, what if the career was the art of living well, of answering the question, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be happy? And how can I be more of both? Because then whatever you do can be for a living, can then be used to fuel your health, happiness, sense of prosperity, sense of identity, and yeah, just help you live with a little bit more flourishing and hopefully a little less stress.
Thank you for simplifying it. I have been criticized that by using career literacy, I'm taking it too academic. And thank you for showing, the audience is that we can really make it practical and use it in everyday life. Part of the show also is learning a little bit about your background. So can you tell us a little bit about your background? What got you to the where you're at, and what got you to launch Creative on Purpose?
Sure, I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest condensed version. I began my life after college as a school teacher. I taught at some private institutions that people would probably recognize some of the names of. About 3 years into that endeavor, I discovered that as much as I love teaching, and I still consider myself a teacher and have been a teacher really all of my life, teaching in academic institutions is a fraught enterprise because as much as I may enjoy making a difference in the classroom with and for the students that I'm working with, there's a lot of other things going on in the hierarchy in the administration, and I just found that I was not able to drive enough joy from the teaching to put up with what I considered to be, at that time, some BS coming from above. So I, soon after my first son was born, made a decision that I was going to pursue an ambition of becoming a full time musician. And I made an agreement with my wife that I would do this for no more, that I would give it a try for a year. And if I made enough every night to do it again the next night, I'd keep doing it. And if I didn't, I'd just go get myself another teaching gig. And turned out that I made enough every night to do it again the next night for almost 35 years. Along the way, also opened up a guitar studio and taught guitar in this little town that we live in, Floyd, Virginia, for almost 20 years, and just derived immense satisfaction and sense of fulfillment. I mean, in terms of identity and meaning, I thought when I landed on the guitar teaching, I loved that even more than I loved the performing, which I loved, a great deal. Then I bumped into this character, Seth Godin, and his Alt MBA program, and that was in August of 2016. I was going in thinking I was going to take my very successful guitar studio and turn it into a digital enterprise and live the dream of making money while I slept. Turned out by the time I exited the Alt MBA, I didn't even want to be a musician or a guitar teacher anymore. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I just knew I wanted to pursue my lifelong interest in ancient philosophy and, all around the art of living well, and my lifelong interest in creative endeavor. And so, over the course of the last 5 years, I have crafted this thing called Creative on Purpose, where I just try to be a compass helping advancing difference makers lead themselves and live their legacy. The idea being that legacy isn't the monuments and money you leave behind, it's the difference that you're making right now. And so, at this point in time, I've retired fully as a musician, closed down my studio at the end of 2020, and now I'm engaged in this enterprise full time, in addition to doing some contract work as a head coach in Seth Godin's Akimbo workshops.
I'm glad you mentioned your music. I kind of knew it had an influence on your work, but do you still use any music, I guess, skills that you learned that transfer to Creative on Purpose?
Absolutely. And uh, music, music making, and music in general is a filter that I see the world through. It provides me with a perspective that is idiosyncratic and allows me to, use metaphors from my musical life musical metaphors and analogies and stories that that help me connect with my audience and help them see in a much more emotional, kind of human, empathetic way, the lessons and the insight that I'm trying to help inspire their journey as creative difference makers.
Part of what I do when I interview my guests is look at their website. And on your website, it opens up with the phrase, live your legacy. I am curious, what are you thinking when you use the word legacy, and how can I or everyone else live their legacy?
Yeah, well, I mean, as I said, legacy, I think, in the United States in particular, we think about just like how can we collect wealth and status so that we'll be remembered when we're gone. And that just seems very, very unhealthy and doesn't seem like a real recipe for happiness or meaningful change. Um, I think of legacy as you will be remembered for the difference that you made while you had a chance to make a difference. So one of the things I do every day is I go for a run at the local cemetery, and there's a story behind that I'm happy to share, but um, it's a meditation for me. The cemetery is on the highest point in town. I can see the Blue Ridge Mountains in the background. It's surrounded by fields, and there's cows lowing, and there's deer prancing around, and the grounds are beautiful. And then, of course, there's these tombstones. And for me, it's a meditation on the fact that my time is on earth is finite, and I should probably do my best to make the biggest difference I can while I can. And to me, that's going to be my legacy. So there will be people in town that remember me as a guitar teacher, that I've launched hundreds of guitar playing adventures, that I help spread happiness and music, by teaching others about the joys of music making. And there's some that will remember me for my handbooks, my writing, and some will remember me for my coaching, or the courses that I've and workshops that I've led. But it's about what you're doing, more than it is what you're going to leave behind in terms of money or monuments. That's the way I like to think about it. So legacy is something that's available to every single one of us at any time that we're ready to lean in and be intentional, and and apply ourselves with integrity to the difference that only each of us can make.
So would you like to share the story or is is it appropriate?
Sure. No, it's so I am
No
somewhat
pressure.
oh no, no, no. It's I love telling this story. So, um, my wife and I raised our sons on a farm in the northern part of the county where we live, and we raised orchards and chickens, and we had dogs and cats, and we had we raised a garden. We raised our boys, and we raised more than a few eyebrows. After the boys grew up and moved out, the farm was a lot of responsibility to take on just by ourselves. So, we sold the farm and moved to town. One of the things that happened in the last years that we were on the farm is I had become very, very overweight. I was approaching my 50th birthday. I realized that, like, it's never going to get any easier for me to lose this weight than it is right now. And I began this practice well, starting with a walk up the driveway and back, that eventually turned into a daily running habit. And I became a runner. I competed in 5Ks. I sometimes won in my age group. And so it was a real part of my identity. I lost 75 pounds in just a couple of months. So when we moved to town, I had to continue my practice, because, you can't be a runner unless you run. So I mapped out a run from our home in town to the cemetery and back, because it was the right amount of miles. The very first day that I was on my run, I was crossing a crosswalk, and although the traffic's supposed to stop, somebody driving a Subaru that I'll never forget, on the back of on their bumper was a sticker that said, "Love your mother," or something like that. And it came so close to hitting me that I actually felt uh, the rearview mirror tug at the fabric of my running shirt. So I came very close to dying. So, like, the irony is not lost to me. Like, just the day after we sold our farm, I almost bought the farm and died. So in that moment, I decided, oh, maybe it would be a good idea if I just got in my car and drove to the cemetery and started running there, where there's no traffic, and not a lot of congestion. Most everybody, and in the age of social distancing, everybody's 6 feet away. Um, so I began going there every day for my run, and that's when I kind of had this epiphany around a favorite quote of mine from Marcus Aurelius. And the quote is, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what is left and live it properly." And it's become this daily ritual where I remind myself every day that I must make the most of the time that I have, because the time that I have is limited and finite.
I love this story. Thank you for sharing it.
Oh,
It's
you're very welcome.
definitely an inspiration, and I think continues your definition of legacy as well. And Marcus Aurelius, I was going to ask you about, but thank you for sharing that quote. I was going to ask you what would be your favorite quote. But what got you, I guess, following Marcus Aurelius?
Yeah, so I when I was young, my my family moved around quite a bit. And so I was frequently, beginning again as the new kid in whatever school, in whatever grade I was attending, and it really, I did not respond well to that, and I was, uh, I grew up in Massachusetts, and so the language that we would use is, oh, he's headed for juvie, which means you're a juvenile delinquent. It so happened that in this town that we were living in as I was entering the seventh grade, had a small private school, and the headmaster of the school lived across the street. And my parents went across the street one day and just said, could you help us out? Our son is really not heading down a great path. We think that the school would provide the smaller classroom setting that would help him. The headmaster took a liking to me. He took us on a tour. He helped me secure a scholarship that enabled my parents to be able to send me to the school. And I was in these classrooms of like 7 students per teacher. It was just an incredible experience. I became a voracious learner where before I wouldn't crack a book, under threat of death. And one of the classes was a class on getting started with languages, and one of the languages that we got started with was Latin. And Don Kelly, who was my teacher, was a classicist, and he would. So Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor who journaled in Greek because that was the language of learned people at that time. And my teacher would take the Greek and translate it back into Latin so that we would then translate it into English. And I loved translating these fragments because I just, as I was translating them, I could just tell that Marcus was speaking to himself in the very same way that I spoke to myself. So I would ask my teacher every day, like, hey, can I have some more of those fragments? And he got tired of translating them for me. So he said, listen, stop bothering me, kid. Here's a copy of the book. You can just read the book. And so the book is Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. I borrowed that book so many times that he finally just gave it to me. And I've been reading it, almost on a daily basis since I was in the seventh grade, which was just a few years after Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome. So, um, yeah, so it's been a profound influence on my life because it's a it's a one of the three classic texts of Stoic philosophy, which is a philosophy dedicated to the art of living well, and it bases the art of living well on the cultivation of virtue, the content of your character, and the service that you provide to others, the good that you do, the good that you cultivate within yourself, but also the good that you do in the world. And so it's informed and inspired all of my work, whether it was music making, teaching, or currently coaching and writing.
I love Marcus Aurelius fragments, as you call them. My favorite is I only been really acquainted with the work a couple of years ago, but is every time you wake up in the morning, I think it was think of the privilege to be able to wake up, to breathe, and to be able to live. And it's funny because they are like right now in the pandemic, these fragments are so important for us to keep going. And I think I am getting to be hooked on Mark Aurelius quotes.
Well, you just
Uh,
pointed to something really important. I mean, Stoicism is a philosophy built for difficult times. It's a philosophy that promises that you can embrace uncertainty and navigate adversity no matter how difficult and still have a sense of flourishing and thriving. And one of the basic practices is in that quote that you just referenced, which is being grateful for what you already have. Because what if you are above ground and breathing, you possess everything you need. That's all you need because all you need to lead a healthy, happy life is the ability to frame your situation in a way that sees possibility and to make decisions that align with your human nature, which is to be a good person and to do good with and for others.
Such important words today. I do have one final question for you, Scott, and that is about any future projects you have or anything going through your mind or current involvements that you would like the audience to learn about and perhaps get engaged in.
Well, I'm all in with Creative on Purpose and this idea of helping advancing difference makers discover, develop, and deliver the difference only they can make. My assertion is that uh, the best way that I can have an impact on making the world a better place is to help other people who are invested in endeavors that seek to make things better. And that's how I can have what my friend Annette calls ripples of influence. Instead of return on investment, I'm looking for ripples of influence. If I can help Hoda level up in her enterprise, then she will go out and change and influence the lives of others, who will then in turn go out and change and influence the lives of others. So primarily that's being done through the community and coaching programs offered by Creative on Purpose, but people can go to the blog and find plenty of insight and inspiration to inform their journeys. And still really grateful for and deeply invested in working with the Akimbo workshops, which allow me to touch thousands of lives every year, and also doing a lot of collaborative working with other difference makers who I admire. I just completed a workshop called Craft a Story That Connects with my friend Natalia Alvarez. I'm working on a course in teaching 3 basic Stoic principles for thriving through adversity with my friend Kelly, and we are offering that to military spouses. And just before this call was getting ready to connect with one of my absolute heroes about the possibility of collaborating on another endeavor around storytelling. One of the things that I deeply believe is that changing your mind is as simple as choosing a different story. In my book Onward, I say choose your story, choose your future. And it sounds simple, and it is simple. The problem is it's not easy, because we love our stories and we love our status quo. We love to know where we stand and what's expected. So we tend to stay where we are because it feels safe. And at the same time, we all have this aspiration to lean into and our potential and our promise. So I'm really interested in exploring ways to help people lean into the tension of changing their minds so that they can lead more fulfilling lives, doing more meaningful work, and making a bigger difference just by telling themselves a better story.
Well, I certainly have benefited from your live videos. I do watch them. And I thank you for doing this, but I also thank you for supporting me and interviewing me and then allowing me to interview. It's one way we can create a ripple effect. And for me, you're supporting me in creating a ripple effect about my mission to increase career literacy. So I want to thank you for that. And these are all the questions I've had for you today, Scott. Was there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up, or any final thoughts?
No, I just want to express my gratitude to you, Hoda, for the difference that you're making every single day in your work, and I'm delighted to and really feel privileged and to have the pleasure of speaking with you today. So just thank you for the work that you do, the difference that you make, and so grateful that we had this opportunity to connect.
My chat with Scott Perry included talking about Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism. What are your thoughts on Stoicism and on what Scott shared? Share in the comments. You can connect with Scott Perry on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, but you can also find him on his website, creativeonpurpose.com. I am your host, Hoda. Until our next episode of Hoda's Career Info, remember to like and subscribe.